Hey everyone's Classic DM, and I wanted to give you like a day one inside look at the Pathfinder Remaster player core. Now, there's a couple other YouTubers that do really, really great deep dives on every class and every spell and every rule, and there's been a lot of great resources over the years on how to play the game and how to do stealth checks and all that kind of stuff. I'm not going to do that, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you, like, you're probably thinking at this point, like, do I want to get a copy of this? Do I want to buy it in PDF? Do I want the book form? And I'm going to just tell you right up front my opinion on this stuff, right? So, for those of you who have been keeping up with this past year, the issue really revolves around the open game license. And let's just take a look at this front page here. To move away from the open game license, Paizo, in conjunction working with some attorneys, created a new license called the ORC license. The only reason this product exists is to completely divorce or separate yourself from any reliance upon Wizards of the Coast and the OGL and the open game license, which has been around since like, what, 1999 or 2000? So it kind of puts them in a bad spot. They end up having to rename a lot of things that are, almost blatantly D&D, right? Things have been around forever. At the same time, they've made enough change to Pathfinder from 3.5 and Pathfinder 1 that's really just not D&D at all in terms of the system's mechanics. But that's not really true, right? You're still using a lot of the same exact mechanics from 5th edition, right? This isn't a 4th edition clone. It's really a 3.5 evolved with a few new words and lots of changes. And the power and the strength of Pathfinder really it really lies in character customization. Everything else in the game is nuts and bolts and gritty mechanics, and there's a role for everything, right? It doesn't have, it's not a real soft game. It's not like Traveler or something like that, right? So I want to kind of burn through this pretty fast because I might make additional videos, but the answer to the question is really this. Do you want to own the physical copy of the book? Then you can pay, $60 a copy and get it because you love to collect books. And hey, I got lots of books too. I have tons of books I may not even open. So if that's what you like to do, you should grab it because it's a moment in history and in RPG history. If you just want to make sure you're staying totally up to date and you have games you're playing right now, then just get the PDFs. That's fine too. Most of us are using Surfaces, slates, and phones and stuff at the table these days anyway. Very few of us are using books. I am because I'm old school. If you're already playing Pathfinder and you already know everything there is to know about Pathfinder, you don't really need these books at all. You would just get them because you want to support Paizo because they're a business and they're one's going to continue to make content for you. You also kind of want to get the books as they're rolled off the shelf. But you really don't need them at all. Like, they're not that different. Some things have been renamed. Some spell school stuff has been modified a little bit. But the core mechanics of playing the game and armor class and rolls to hit and range and stride and strike and reflex and fortitude, all that crap that's been 3.0, 3.5 for 23 years is still there. Now, the identity of Pathfinder revolves heavily upon their own unique twist and takes on classes and how they've changed working with alignment and their little world they created called Galarian, which is not a little world at all. It's way huge. It's been around for, since 2007 or something. So you don't really need these books at all. But I'm not saying that because I encourage you not to buy them. I think you should buy them because you love Pathfinder. So if you love Pathfinder, you should get them. But if you're a AD&D player and you never jumped on Pathfinder in August of 2019 when it first came out, you could probably get those books for even cheaper. Will these books make it easier for you? It would, because some of the naming and some basic mechanics of spellcasting have changed, right? So little mechanics that if you're playing a game at the table and you created a character in the original second edition book, not that much is really all that different, right? And they didn't do this to rip anyone off or anything like that. They did it because they need to restate the rules. And the reason why they need to restate the rules is because they're using the ORC license. And the ORC license is very interesting. Let's go to single page view. Let me just show you how this ORC license is put together because it's quite interesting. We'll go to single page view. We're going to go all the way to the bottom in the back where your big OGL would normally be. And here we go right here. Let's zoom in real close, right? This is basically going to tell you that, yeah, man, it has a license. Which is great because it's not this big old, 2-page long unreadable font OGL. This product is licensed under the ORC license to be held in the Library of Congress and available online at various locations, including the Paizo.com ORC license, AzoraLaw.com ORC license, and others. All warranties are disclaimed as set forth therein. So you don't even have a copy of the ORC license in the book anymore. Let's move this down a little bit so you can see the part that's cut off. So the project is original game content. It's not based on a licensed game system, so they have to actually blatantly say that. But I will tell you the truth, this is really based on an original game system. It still has strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma, but they're calling them attributes as opposed to ability scores. And instead of rolling up ability scores, we're using attribute modifiers. So we're ignoring those numbers that used to roll in the old days from 3 to 18. Now we're using the boosts, and we used to be ability boost, or now attribute boost. We still have ancestry, background, and classes, etc. And I'll go through that kind of crap in a few minutes. But the reserved material element and expressly designated licensed materials, what about the orc license, which is very different? Reserved material elements in this product include all elements designated as reserved material under the orc license. To avoid confusion, such items include trademarks, registered trademarks, proper nouns, like Mauricio, right? Characters, who they have special characters in their game world. Deities, like, I don't know, do they have what's one of their deities? I forgot their deity names. Their locations, which is all means all Galarian, as well as adjectives. That's kind of how can you have that as reserved material? Names, titles, descriptive terms derived from proper nouns, artworks. That's great because they have a lot of the old artwork, and they've also pulled from their library of artwork from a long time ago, and they kept some artwork that's exactly in the same positions from the original core rulebook, which was released in 2019. Organizations, plot, storylines, and trade dress. This reserve material section is basically saying that there's elements in this book that's ours and we created, and you can't copy it or use it and distribute it. Expressly designated licensed material. This product contains no expressly designated licensed material. Now, the orc license is available on their website. I'll put a link in the description that tells you how to go look at it. In essence, the orc license is like, you can use anything you want in this. So in theory, what you could do is you could make your own game and use every single one of their monsters, except for the ones that have specific character names and deities and locations and things like that. So you could use a zombie, right, and use all their stats if you wanted to. So this is a good thing. Now, a lot of people are like, wow, that orc license is terrible. I don't think it's terrible at all. It's extremely open. It's going to allow anyone who wants to do anything with the game do stuff with it. Okay, we're going to burn in 15 minutes or less through what's going on with the actual game itself, what's really changed, what's really, really different. Like I'm saying, 98% of this book is the same thing in the core rule book. There has been a lot of effort and energy put into fixing the things that were connected to the OGL. That is an achievement in of itself. But when you read through it, you're like, oh, okay. It's as if you read through it for the first time. If you approach reading the book as if you've never played Pathfinder before, none of it will be weird to you. It will feel like a 3.5 game. Okay, so very quickly, let's just go through here. The book is set up in a weird way. It has this, like, if you don't know jack shit about role-playing games, here's going to explain everything to you. And they drop some buzzwords like they did in the first book about strength, dexterity, and campaigns and adventures, and critical success and critical failure. That's all the same. Their whole idea of downtime and exploration mode, that's all the same. None of that's changed. They put pretty well here on page 10, 11, like, here's the new words that are slightly different. Like, we're still calling them player characters. They're still using perception for their initiative rolls. They still have a background. They still have an attack and armor class. That's not new. That's because those are kind of system agnostic words. They aren't like the city of Greyhawk. They're not a proper noun or anything. Bonuses and penalties. What is a check? A class? A condition? These are all just regular old words in the regular world. Notice how there's no real words in here that are especially Pathfinder words, right? Game Master. Galarian is the only one that's listed in here that you could probably consider because it's a proper noun, and they cover that earlier on. So when you go through the first chapter, this example of play is pukified. I have to say it. It's written like for a 5-year-old. I'm going to bitch about this for a minute. and please laugh along with me because I know why that was written this way. It was written this way to help someone understand how role-playing can feel with a happy, joy group that also knows about the mechanics and is suggesting what rolls to make, and the GM's not really running the game. The GM's just describing what you see, and the player's saying, I'm going to make my diplomacy check, and that kind of crap. It's kind of annoying to me because I'm so damn old school, but younger generations might find this pretty useful. If you're a hardcore Pathfinder player, you'll see past the silliness in the dialogue and realize that, oh, okay, in this situation, Valerius, run by Lewis, these are all employee names, he's going to foster up, I'm going to step forward and talk to the cold kobold in mind because I have this much +3 to diplomacy. This is really weird element to think about, and it's written this way on purpose because they want you to kind of see how in just 2 pages, with them climbing down into the mine and encountering this kobold, interacting with it without killing it. Like in the old days, you would just kill it instantaneously, right? And how they want to figure out what's going on, and they have a zombie-type creature which has 70 hit points, good lord, and a little ranged attack, and multiple attack penalties, sudden charges in here, the damage bonus from Kira casting a buff on Valeris. It's a good little example. I just think that there's a couple things that are wrong with it. Let's just talk about that really, really quickly. It's weird to me that when players are saying, I'm going to do this skill, name the skill, because I have this plus to the skill. If you're role-playing a character, you say what you want to do. Right? I'm going to try to talk to the kobold, right? You don't say, I have a +3 diplomacy, I call out to her. And then the GM has to say, well, what do you say? And someone in your party saying, "Someone, the poor kobold, can someone calm her down? I'm terrible with people." Like no one would ever say that, but that's okay because I know why they're doing it. But it's a little goofy, and they're slipping in the mechanics, and they're like, "Well, I have this. I'm going to use this ability." So it's kind of weird. Usually, the GM should be able to have complete noobs at the table, and the GM can say, "Hey, what is your recall knowledge?" And it's +7. We'll roll a d20 and add that 7 to it. That's how Jason would do it. When Jason's doing it live, he's mitigating the game with the voice actors that are playing, and they're just having fun, saying things they want to do. That was a minor critique of this, but hey, like I said, I understand why they wrote it, so don't get too hung up on it, but it is quite silly. Not a big fan of it. This whole introductory chapter here is just telling you about all the things you don't know about Pathfinder, assuming you never read the core rulebook. You don't even need to read this. If you've played the game before, there's nothing about it that you need to know about. The only thing that's different is the 6 attribute modifiers. There is no longer rolling up the strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. You don't have to do that anymore. You just start off with 0 and start gaining bonuses called attribute bonuses from your ancestry and then from your background and then from your class. You get 4 free boosts, but you can't apply them to every single thing stacked. And that's all explained quite clearly. So if you're rolling up a character, just read this and it'll be no problem. You'll get it, and there won't be an issue with it at all. So this is the part that I'm going to complain about, but I understand, because the workload to create these books and the amount of time they had to do it in, considering they had to rework a lot of the spellcasting systems with spell schools and redo the witch, and they picked and choose who to put in this book, and we're going to have to wait like 6 to 7 months to have all of them. Now remember, Player Core 2 coming out next year. GM Core out right now, out today. Player Core and GM Core out right now. You can start playing right now. You're going to be out 8 classes, right? And you don't have any bestiaries. The first bestiary comes out next year. Now, you're not screwed because it's in the Orc license. That means that Archive and Nethys can be used to look up the monsters, and actually all the creatures are still the same, but you just don't read their ability scores anymore. You just read their attribute bonuses. And if you could just get that one thing through your head, it's no big deal. But they add their typical kind of piezo wonkiness that's in here, and whether I like it or not is irrelevant. But a lot of people love this kind of stuff. But your core ancestries, which are really races, is dwarf, elf, gnome, halfling, and human, and they also allow for mixing those up. Now, the one thing that's kind of odd is they also allow you to have halflings, humans, leashy, and orcs. Now, leashy, orcs, and goblins are not like your traditional AD&D stuff, but it's really kind of slipped its way into the whole Pathfinder universe. This leashy plat person, which kind of feels like the character's race you can play in Guild Wars 2. And orcs have always been around. No one's ever played an orc in D&D previously, but they allowed goblins in. Hey, they got orcs too. So they allow you to mix those up. So they have a versatile heritage of changeling, Nephilim, and mixed ancestry. This is where old school traditionalists would be like, what? But then again, if you saw how 4th edition in D&D add a lot of wacky stuff like that too, you'd be like, it's just more fantasy wackiness. Use it or don't use it. You don't have to. Mixed ancestry allows us to get that half-elf that you saw in AD&D, or the half-orc that was in AD&D, or a half of a halfling. So, and changeling is something that's kind of a child born from hags, right? And the Nephilim are divine, ethereal type creatures, not ethereal, divine from the outer sphere influence for fiends and devils and things like that. Now, it's interesting I say devils because alignment is gone. Whatever. It didn't matter anyway. Now they have like these edicts and anathemas, how you want to pronounce it. Now, the second thing you're going to find is like, okay, that's fine. You can work with this. You can build a human anything, a dwarf anything. There's no class and race matrix like there was a long time ago in AD&D. You can play Bard, Cleric, Druid, Fighter, Ranger, Rogue, Witch, and Wizard. Whoops. A witch? Huh? What? So remember, in the original game, you had a lot more classes. You actually had the Barbarian, the Champion, and the Monk, and the Sorcerer included, where they split them up into groups of 8. So you get 8 in this book and 8 in a book next year. So you're going to get the Barbarian, the Champion, the Monk, the Sorcerer, the Swashbuckler, the Oracle, I think that, and the Alchemist in the next book. This one's just got Bard, Cleric, Druid, Fighter, Ranger, Rogue. So in the Player Core 2, we'll include Alchemist, Barbarian, Champion, Investigator, Monk, Oracle, Sorcerer, and Swashbuckler. I think I made a mistake there. Did I make a mistake? No. And you also get Witch and Wizard in this one. That's no problem. So when you're going to get into the books, you already know how to play these classes, you know all their spells, you just be, oh wait, this one's been renamed. Because when you get into the character creation system, the only thing you got to rewire your brain about is that it's not called ability boost anymore, it's attribute bonuses and attribute boost, which just basically just removes those numbers off your character sheet. You don't have a 17 in dexterity anymore, or a 15 in constitution. So you're still going to do the same things you did before, that ABC system that you remember from the first core rulebook, which is you're going to pick an ancestry, which has subsections called heritages. Then you're going to pick all these feats. As you level up, you're going to come back to your ancestry and have additional feats to pick. And this is because Pathfinder's player action is either an action that anyone can do, or it's a feat, right? So it's like a power in 4th edition. Everything you do in Pathfinder is going to be a generic action like aid, right, or something like that, or it's going to be a class slash ancestry specific feat. And they're just actions. They're like spells. If you're playing an MMO and you got an action bar, you got a bunch of abilities you put on your action bar, that's what they are. But in Pathfinder, you might end up with like 100 to 150 of these things, right? So when you're creating a character, none of that is really new. That same concept is there. There's a hell of a lot of skills. There's a hell of a lot of feats. And they're very customized towards which ancestry and background and heritage you choose. That is the strength of this game system. No other game system, with the exception of possibly Traveller, the new version of Traveller done by Mongoose Publishing, has that much character, class, freedom creation that anyone else has ever done. So I don't want to go into too much detail with that kind of stuff, but you can, one thing to remember about the versatile, let's go to the versatile ones. Where are they at? Ancestries and backgrounds. This is the ancestries, all the races, basically. And you get to the versatile ones. This is the new one. Get past Orc. There we go. So I want to mention these because it's new. The other ones you could just read. I mean, everyone knows what dwarves, elves, gnomes, goblins, halflings, humans, and leashes are in Orc. The versatile heritage is one sentence at the top of a 75, right? What you're doing is you first pick something like a dwarf, right? And then you decide you want them to be a versatile heritage. So to play a character with a versatile heritage, first select your ancestry, just like you would for any character. So the hit points, size, speed, attribute abuse, ability flaws, language traits, and other abilities of ancestry. Then, instead of choosing a heritage that would normally be available, right, you would then pick a versatile heritage. Now you say to yourself, well, gosh, how is that really going to do for me? Okay, when you get ready to pick ancestry feats, you can choose from both pools. Let me say that one more time. So you get ready to pick a generic ancestry feat for your Nephilim dwarf or your changeling elf, right? Your elf changeling or your elf Nephilim planar scion or whatever you pick, or your half orc. You're going to look at the orc ancestry feats, and you also going to have this pool to choose from this mixed ancestry heritage. So it's like having two different backgrounds, two different mothers, fathers, that kind of thing. So that's where you have a lot of feats. And like I said before, everything in Pathfinder, all the unique actions for your character class come from your feats. And of course, it's spellcasting and crap like that too. So, but everyone's going to be able to do aid and push and all that kind of crap. And some of them are coming from skills, and we all know that, right? So why do we want to mention this? Well, it's not new concept. And some of you who play Pathfinder will be like, yeah, I got that already. Because remember, a lot of target audience on my YouTube channel are a lot of D&D players or old school players, and some of the stuff them, like they play Pathfinder a little bit, and they're not as hardcore as the guys that are tuning into some of the other YouTube channels. I think the Rules Lawyer's channel is awesome. I think he does a great job. He spends a lot of time making really good detailed videos. How it's played has tons and tons and tons of great tutorials and lessons, which are well done PowerPoint presentations that kind of walk you through like a class lesson in college, university, like how do you do perception and how does stealth work. So if you're learning the game, those still pretty much apply. Like they didn't change everything. The core mechanics of the game are the same. But if you're making a character and you want to start playing the game, you've got new options here, okay? These things have evolved over time. So the versatile heritage thing is kind of a neat. Let's cram through spellcasting real quick, right? So Whether you like it or don't like it, it doesn't matter. You use it, lose it, whatever. It's the same background page as before, whether you're a Barrison, Charlatan, Barkeep, etc. Those things kind of it give you a sense of who your character has become. And there's languages, and then we go through all the classes. And of course, when you're building a character in Pathfinder, just like you do in either one, you're going to go to the class section, and you're going to look on the right-hand bar and see what skills. None of this is different. This is all the same process. You got to go all the way down here to spells. But I will do this in Bard, right? Bards are going to be occult-based casters. So when you look at the spell list, you can look at the occult list, right? Now they have some class-centric repertoire type things and composition spells. The cleric is going to be divine, right? Makes sense. It was divine before, it's divine now. It's not that different. So when you go to the cleric, all your spellcasting is being granted you by your deity, right? So you're going to look at the divine spell list. And there's all kinds of different other, subtle things related to your class, like divine font and maximizing spells and all these kinds of things. That's fine. Let's go down to the druid, though. So the druid, you would think, oh wow, there'd be like nature spells, right? Well, they're called primal. So you're starting to pick up if you play Pathfinder, right? Those core names, right, of divine, arcane, occult, and primal, which they made spell cards for, which I have, which are really useful. They're super useful. That's all still there. The only thing that's really kind of changed is some little details related to what they're calling a tradition. They're using the phrase tradition a lot. So, for example, at the top here, Druid spellcasting. The power of a wild world flows through you. You are a spellcaster and can cast spells of the primal tradition using the cast a spell activity, which is an action. So notice the word primal tradition is in lowercase. That's all done on purpose because when they're trying to rework everything, let's go down to the witch, right? We skip all these martial guys. We all know what they do. They're unchanged. You got to have them easy to play, fun. When you go to the witch, they've redesigned her to be much more interesting and much more thematically cool, in my opinion. You have a patron, which is represented by your familiar. So it's not like a god or a deity that you're praying to, an invisible entity or a man in the sky. He loves you. You have this patron of mystical secrets that are channeled through your familiar. And that's how the patron sent the familiar to you. And that's how you get your different types of spells. But if you're a witch, you're going to have to choose the patron. And so when you choose the patron, that determines what type of spell school you get to work with. Let me say that again. You're playing a witch. You have to pick a patron, which is kind of like a deity. And then when you pick that patron and their theme, you're going to get a spell list to work with. And you'll have some initial lessons and a familiar ability. So there's a number of those, and those start on page 183. So, for example, one of them might be called Flamekeeper. The patron contacted you in a moment when willpower was close to sputtering out. Their reassuring presence was like breathing, kindling, bringing an ember back aflame with magic giving you the strength to carry on and bring others to the cause. Your patron is likely a divine being, like an angel or aeon acting covertly. Through the possibility exists, it might be a more sinister entity, using you to unknown ends. So when you have that one, you pick that as your patron. Okay, you're going to use the divine spell list. You have a patron skill, which can be religion. If you pick the resentment, you're going to have a spell list that's occult, and a patron skill, occultism. If you pick silence and snow, your spell list is going to be primal, and your patron skill is going to be nature. So really interesting class, right? A lot of cool ways to find something cool. You basically have access to, upon character creation, to any of the 4 major spell schools, if you want to call them. They've probably been renamed. And when you go to the wizard's kind of interesting because they created these physicalized spell schools. Now, at a base level, the wizard still gets to cast arcane spells, right? They call it arcane magic, right? Through dedicated study and practice, you construct spells with an academic rigor by shaping arcane magic. So when you get ready to do this, you're going to pick spells from the arcane school. But there's elements called an arcane thesis. You can specialize in certain elements such as experimental shapeshifting or spell blending. There's even a staff nexus. And then there's arcane schools. So you can read through the different types of abilities they have here, but you get to the arcane school part, that's where you have things like the Ars Grammatica or the School of Battle Magic or the School of Civic Duty, and tied right into Galarian. These are locations like the University of Texas, University of Florida, University of Miami, Penn State, et cetera, or University in Berlin or something like that. So When you do this, you get access to some curriculum spells. So that kind of gives you a secondary spell list. For example, in the Schools of Ars Grammatica, you can see here on page 199 where the guy's playing with a Rubik's Cube floating in the air, that they get certain cantrips. They get, Dispel Magic and Translate for second level. At third, Enthrall or Veil of Privacy. So you're going to see these specializations. So it makes sense because you go to a particular university. If you go to a school of architecture, you're going to learn everything you know about architecture. If you go to a school of digital art and design, you might learn how to use Photoshop or Blender or 3 Studio Max, etc. So specialization, it makes sense. So when you're creating your character, you're kind of imagining like when they're young, they went to these spell schools, they studied the School of Boundary, and that's why they're able to do telekinetic hand or eclipse bursts, or interplanar teleport at a later date. So that's very different. It's not complicated though. So it basically gives you a way to have a few special spells that may influence the spells you pick from the arcane list. And one thing very interesting about Pathfinder when it comes to spells is that there's a lot of duplication of spells. You'll find situations where a spell Levitate is in 2 different schools, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. Instead of and when they have the spell list created for you, it's actually quite easy to work with. Let's go way down. Whoops, sorry, I bumped the microphone. Let's go way down to the spell list. Let's see, that's skills. Skills, acrobatics, feats, equipment, because all that stuff's the same. None that's really different. I'm not going to rename longswords. Oh gosh, they're way down here. Sorry, I can't hyperlink click this thing. Sorry, we get to spells. So you're talking about $297 for the spell stuff. The thing they did really well is they once again explained these magical traditions, which I called spell schools earlier: arcane, occult, divine, and primal. They also talk about these 4 essences, which is matter, spirit, mind, and life. That makes sense. They're like thematic ideas. And they talk about spell traits such as morph, polymorph, illusion, summon, minion. Notice how they're using what you would call normal language. They haven't created wacky role-playing game phrases for this. It makes it very easy for anyone to understand. And they talk about how you deal with spells and setting spells and triggers and reading spells and spell attacks. None of that's changed. It's all the same as always was. Then there's the spell list by these traditions, right? And you'll see that's just the word real quickly, like pest form, turn into a non-threatening animal. But that's not the full spell. But this gives you the breakdown by the different magical traditions, right? Magical traditions. So you can find, if you're working on arcane, you'll have to look at a couple pages to pick the ones once you know them. You don't have to flip through the entire list. Then it's alphabetical later. So we were, say later on, you got, okay, I need to understand how gate works in Pathfinder. You can see on page 333, which is half of 666, isn't it? That the gate spell's level 10, and it tells you the range, 120 feet. Good Lord, that's huge. You tear up and rift another plane, create a portal that creatures can travel through. Oh my God. So, I mean, very well laid out. The spell list and the spell book, just like in the Player's Handbook in Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, really well put together. And of course, since they created special spells called focus spells, which are ones you can use once every 10 minutes, you can regain a focal point once every 10 minutes. You get 1 for some of these spellcasters. But every class has their own focal spell list as well, which is even more personality, even more customization for your character classes. So in summary, let's just wrap things up here because we've been rambling at high speed, because I didn't want to go through here and trump Ronald Cruz's cool video channel. No, we don't want to do that. He's too cool. He's doing a much better job explaining the dirty, gritty details. I highly recommend you go subscribe to his channel. But when you're approaching this Pathfinder Remaster, you've got to think of the big picture. And the big picture all revolves around the Orc license, getting away from being attached to Wizards of the Coast. You can do anything you want. And as a third-party creator, that license is super open. So like if I take the Indigo Aces and I create a Pathfinder adventure for the Orc license, someone can actually copy the entire thing and re-release it and change a couple names unless I specifically spell out things. The thing that they've done very well here as an example is they've, instead of saying explicitly a long list of all the names that are especially product identity, like in the OGL, they say, this is on file at the Library of Constance, you should probably read it. And as a big company that's running the show pretty well, you're going to get sued if you do something wrong, or they're going to tell you to cease and desist. But the Orc license should be a big open doorway for anyone to make third-party content for Pathfinder. Whether that'll take off or not, we'll just have to see. It may be too open of a license. But I do like the fact that they've embraced role-playing games as being open to everyone. Here's their rule system, because, yes, they dedicate their lives and their business to doing this as clean and well thought out, high-quality production value books. And for third-party people, hey, you can do what you want to do, but here's the gold standard. I doubt very seriously someone else is going to come in there like Pathfinder did after 4th edition and make their own game system. What will probably end up happening is people will still make lots of little adventures and little classes and stuff, and it'll all be orc, and it'll all be spread all over the place. So hopefully we'll have a big surge in popularity once again in role-playing games. And in summary, if you're on the fence on buying the books, the PDFs are $19.99 each. And the hardcover books are expensive, right? And it's going to be the GM Core. I'll talk about GM Core in another video. Do you really need it? No. Are you a hardcore Pathfinder player? Yeah, you got to have it, man. You got to have it. I mean, collect them all, right? Isn't that the whole idea behind being a fan of these things? You live these things. You know, you collect them all. You don't buy one Warhammer army and stop there. I mean, everyone wants them all. When you get into something, you want it all. And the fact that people at Paizo and the design team and everyone else involved, the artists, everyone else, have put so much time and energy into doing this when it's a huge risk, right? It's a huge risk because you hear a lot. There's also dingbats on the internet like, it's confusing. It's not confusing. It's now a separate game with its own orc license. Forget about D&D. These guys can do anything they want to do now. And they can create all kinds of cool stuff. And so can you. So if you want to make your own ventures, you can release your own ventures. If you want to add more classes to the game, you can do that too. Do it all under the orc license. All right? All right, I'll leave it there, and I hope you guys had fun watching the video. But I hope you also get kind of a sense of like, what do I want this? Do I not want this? What's really different? 98% of it is exactly what was in the core rule before. What's changed was things that needed to be tweaked and made better, like the spellcasting and the witch and things like that. But you don't have access to quite everything, but that's coming soon enough. And if you do get a chance to share this video with your friends, that'd be really appreciated. We put a lot of time and energy into Pathfinder in 2019, 2020. I've been doing my own original games since then. I'm not sure if I'm going to do more Pathfinder content or modules. I probably will update my existing stuff and maybe do a few new ones. And I've got some original games I'm doing now too. So yeah, check out this. Be sure to check out The Rules Lawyer. His YouTube channel is awesome. And you guys have fun. We'll talk to you later.